Hi, I'm Dr. Gwen, and my channel is all about creating content that empowers the neurodiverse community. In this episode, Genie Love comes onto the show to talk about what an ADHD and autism coach is and how she helps her clients through her NeuroAutonomy model. We also talk about the similarities and differences between a coach and a psychologist and how the power of understanding and acceptance is at the heart of both. If you're interested in what an ADHD and autism coach is, stay tuned. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Genie Love, which, by the way, I love Genie's name, who is an ADHD and autism coach. Hi, Genie. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, Gwen. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for just agreeing to come on to the show. It's so cool to have a coach on the show because so often people are like, well, what's the difference between a psychologist and a coach and a life coach? What's that difference? And I think there's quite a bit of crossover in many ways, like kind of a Venn diagram, but there are also some differences, right? So we'll get into that. I mean, maybe what we can do is maybe like introduce yourself to the audience so they can get to know who you are.
Sure. Okay. So, I'm Genie Love, and my background is 20 years of experience teaching high school students who have had learning disabilities, but I really, really connected with the students who had ADHD and autism. And so the path sort of unfolded that my family and I were in South America for 5 years, and I had one specific autistic student who was my student, and the reason that I was there, and that was really kind of amazing. It was so amazing because I left behind public education and a caseload of maybe 25 students that I was responsible for teaching and coaching, really. And I got to spend 5 years focused on one person. And it was so profound for me. I was very nervous to just have only one student for all of my attention. But I was able to do everything that I wished that I could do for each of my 25 students. I could do that over a slow period of time and build these skills. And he's very successful, very happy, doing very well right now. And so I saw my vision, my goals, my plans all kind of come together. And it was this beautiful experience. So 2020 comes along, and life is thrown into some pretty big changes for all of us. And we decided to return home to the United States. My work was wrapping up with him anyway. And so we were in this, my husband and I were in this transition of, okay, what are we going to do now? And I have a 10-year-old daughter. She was 7 at the time. We decided that I would stay home and not go directly back to work in case she needed to be homeschooled. And I had this like really amazing opportunity over the course of a couple of years to just sort of look at my career and look at this second half. I have, so many more years to go. What do I want to do with it? And I just didn't think that public education was what was going to be best for my family. My daughter, we were finding out, we understand now, she has ADHD, and she was having some, and still has some, emotional regulation problems. And so for me to be emotionally and energetically available for her was maybe going to need a career shift. And so I started researching and studying and found that there's this growing number of adults who are diagnosing themselves primarily, but some are getting an official diagnosis of having ADHD and or autism. And I thought, well, this is what I have always loved doing, and I have some pretty great skills. I've always been successful. Let's see what it's like to start coaching adults. And so I did. And so here I am. I love it. It's amazing. I get to share all the experiences, all the knowledge that I've gathered over 20 years with adults who didn't get what my students got in high school for a variety of reasons. And so here I am taking that teaching and kind of shifting it into coaching.
Amazing. Amazing. Um, what an experience. I got kind of shivers when you said that you were able to be with one student for 5 years. I can't even imagine the impact um, that had experientially. Not only for you, but for the student. Like so flippin' cool. Like like it's so like so cool. Hey Jeannie, let's talk about what a coach is, right? Like, let's start there. I think oftentimes, and like I said in the beginning, sometimes people are like, well, what's that difference? What's the difference between a psychologist or a coach? But like, let's start. What is a coach? What is the role of a coach in someone's life?
So in the work that I do, I'm coaching is just you come to me with whatever it is that's holding you back right now. And we tackle that like head on. What is it that you want? And let's get moving forward immediately. Let's get some strategies that you can use right now, some accountability. We meet very regularly and then just constantly revising and revision, like what's working, what isn't working, why isn't working, let's adapt, let's evolve, and then just building in some other skills as things new concerns appear, or maybe they didn't notice that, but as we talk about it, I say, oh, well, that's connected to this. So let's build this, which will help you to better meet your goals. And so it's very action oriented, like it's go. Show up day one, let's go. That's how I feel about coaching.
Yeah, it's very goal oriented, action oriented, I will say.
Yes.
I love that word accountability, this idea of, hey, we're going to lay down some action steps that we kind of come to together and collaborate on together. And then you try them and you come back and we iterate. And we keep doing that
Yes.
until it feels better to you, or whatever it is that, you came for. I think that's so great. And I think it offers, coaching offers such a really cool place to get someone's guidance in regards to what are some strategies that I never knew of? How might
Yes.
I see myself and accept myself in, a positive or productive way? And Jeannie, you have a really cool way in which you guide your decisions, or a framework for how you think about your clients. So, do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, so I have sort of a process that I call the neuroautonomy method. And so there's sort of three pillars or three aspects to that program. The first, as maybe I kind of mentioned before, is like the action, like let's go on the strategies. So there's a toolkit because that's what my clients come in. They want to take action right now. So, just a variety of tools or strategies that work for all sorts of brains. And we start to unfold which ones are the best for you. What does it look like in your life? Those kinds of things. So we build a toolkit of strategies. The second aspect of that is mindfulness. And the purpose of mindfulness, maybe I'll do a little bit of unpacking what that means to me, which is many of my clients have experience with meditation or longer periods of sitting and, being quiet and thoughtful about their time. Mindfulness for me is more of an awareness of each day to day moment. So we spend so much time, and especially if you have a very busy brain or a noisy brain, as my clients will sometimes call it, it's that you're just kind of going, 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 going on autopilot. Thoughts are pinging and all the time on top of the distractions of technology. And so what we do is learn mindfulness, which is to catch that and quiet it, let it go, and bring yourself back to what your goals are for this moment at this time. And in fact, even just speaking more slowly and taking a breath, I can feel it in my stomach, which is where it always sits with me. And so, how do we slow that down so that you are doing the things that you want to do. Your attention is where you want it to be. Your energy is focused how you want it to be. So that's mindfulness. We practice that throughout the day. And then the third is sort of a mental fitness aspect and positive emotional intelligence. There is a program that I coach now called Positive Intelligence. You can research it. It's a very well respected program. And I am now able to coach it. And what it does is it kind of combines the two that I was already doing into a really nice package. It just rounds the whole thing out, which is the positive emotional intelligence is you being okay with you. We have developed these super highway neural pathways in our brain of negativity. And my clients and most people, I think, just come with so much baggage from how much they struggled in school and in their early career and just never really had it all together. Everybody else has it all together, and you have never had it all together socially, executive functioning, time management, getting things done. Why can't I just get the thing started? And just like carrying all of that. And if we can start to own why, your brain, well, why is that? And we can start to treat ourselves a little bit better. So learn a more positive way to own those things instead of constantly berating ourselves about them. That's the positive emotional intelligence, the autonomy part of the neuroautonomy. Like, this is my brain. This is what I need. This is how it works. As well as mental fitness, which goes back a little bit to the mindfulness, circles back to that, which is holding on to the strategies instead of they've tried so many things and nothing has worked. How can we hold on to them? And so it all kind of works full circle together.
Yeah.
That's a
I mean,
summary of
how
my program.
often? Yeah, I love that's so great. And I love the idea of autonomy, and I like the word autonomy over independence in many ways, just because, for many and many of my clients anyway, independence can often mean being alone. And then until we understand, oh wait, independence isn't about being alone, right? Because we're all interdependent on each other.
Mhm.
No matter what our brains look like, actually, we tend to rely on others for things as well. And so, but how do I really own and have the agency in my life to live in it in the way that I want to live in it? Which is so fantastic. The mental fitness piece, Jeannie, is so interesting to me because how often do many of us professionals, whether we're coaches or psychologists or interventionists in general, we have the greatest plans laid out. Right? We work with our clients and we've got like these awesome plans for like emotional regulation or distress tolerance or getting a project done or starting a difficult task or whatever this is. And then we come to the next session and it's like none of it happened. And, what were the barriers that led to that, right? What were the barriers that got in the way of not being able to start? And this is tough, which is why I think you had mentioned you see your clients very frequently or regularly in order to help this. Like, how often, Jeannie, I know all your clients are different, but in general, like, how often are you meeting with your clients?
In general, once a week for a 45 to 60-minute session.
Yeah. 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 And how do you help them with that mental fitness piece in between of the sessions?
So it comes back to sort of the mindfulness, which is to catch that it's happening. And mindfulness takes a lot of time to develop. So here we are. We practice it in regular times, but then when things are calm and regularly throughout the day. And then the goal is to understand why the thing is it's happening. I'll use myself for an example. I am a procrastinator. And I have only recently identified now that that's more of an avoidance. I'm trying to avoid an uncomfortable thing, a thing that I don't want to do. I don't want to call the insurance company. I don't really enjoy writing, so I don't want to like sit down and like write my next newsletter letter. Like I'm an avoider. Okay, so if I can own that and just like, okay, that's me, that's my brain, that's how I am. Everybody else has their thing going on. This is one that's going on in mine. So I'm okay with it and I'm going to catch it. And when I catch it, then I can do a quick little mindfulness breathing or just kind of close my eyes for a second and say, aha, that's what you're doing. Okay, fine, go away. I'm going to get to work now. So it's like we can really distract ourselves from whatever the thing is. And so the mental fitness, so, because my thoughts kind of ramble too, the mental fitness is to just practice catching it, calling it out, and then using the strategy that we have talked about. And it's very purposeful, it's very thoughtful, it's not very mindful, it takes energy. And so to get that practice over and over and
Mhm.
over again, mindfulness is also without judgment. We are not going to be hard on ourselves for not getting this right. We've got, plenty of time to get good at this. And then to just really be very upfront about it's fun to learn new strategies and try new things. And then the work is to now do the work. And it gets a little bit, after a month or 6 weeks of the coaching, it gets a little bit less exciting. And that's the hard work. And we have to
Yeah.
like dive into the
Yeah.
hard work.
Yeah. Building new skills is hard and
Mm,
not linear. I think a lot of people are like, okay, and we understand this, like repetition leads to more progress, and that's great. But it's not as linear, I think, as we think it is, right? And so, you could practice it hundreds of times, and then all of a sudden it'll feel like, oh, it's clicked. Like I got it. But it wasn't the fact that you did, it went from 59 times to 60 times. You know what I mean? Like it's that you've been built and that's how it worked for you. And so
yes.
as much as wow, I stopped practicing and now I have to go all the way back to zero again, which is just not the case either. And so it is really applying and practicing, which is hard. It's hard.
Yes. And I would say too, like just a restart, like a constant reset. Okay, I've
Yeah.
fallen off. It's
Yeah.
doesn't need to be at the beginning of the month. It doesn't need to be on a
Yeah.
Monday. It can be Tuesday
Right.
afternoon. You know what? We're restarting and
Yeah.
just being okay with that.
Yeah, yeah. Jeannie, as you're working with adults with ADHD and or autism. And if they're self-diagnosing, which usually if someone's self-diagnosing, they're self-diagnosing as adults, right? By that time, I imagine that there are a lot of negative narratives that they have heard or felt because actions, I think, speak louder than words. Um, and how do you how do you disconnect those or understand those or replace them actually? Because living in the neuromajority when you are wired differently is hard. And I think if you're diagnosing yourself as an adult, there are probably many things that you didn't understand about yourself when you were younger. And I find that a lot of times the neuromajority or others that don't understand this because it's a hidden thing, right? It's not visible, will often prescribe what I call the moral diagnoses, the lazy, the unmotivated, the you don't care, the I don't understand why you could do it then and you can't do it now, so therefore you just don't care about it, or whatever that is. I find that it's a lot of those things that cumulatively build up that are hard to disconnect from as we're kind of going through this process of self acceptance. I don't know. What are
Yes.
you finding?
Yes, it's like peeling back. I mean, I think the onion is I
Yeah.
mean, it's just the perfect way to do it. Like, we have to start with, like, so again, they come in with some very specific goals, but then as we start to unpack a little bit more, first of all, my clients are, pretty. excited to finally understand how their brains are and who they are. So there's like this sense of like, finally, thank God I understand who I am, what's going on in my brain. Then there's grieving for all the years that they didn't understand who they were and what was going on and lost time. So there's like a little bit of that that's kind of happening. And then as we start to peel away, sometimes they're a little nervous. Like, I don't know what's under
Yeah.
there. I've been covering it up for so long
Yeah.
that to sort of start to own whether it's the emotions that I've been hiding to try to cover up how I really feel or my confusion about myself or whatever. And
Yeah.
so find that as we just so slowly, whatever, it's hard to describe because each client is so different. But for example, I've got a client that I'm working with right now, and we're trying to tone down some extreme anger. Like that's just what has built up over her lifetime. And so we came up with a strategy that was a little cue for herself that whenever she encountered somebody who might be a trigger, I don't she came up with this. They always come up with it. I just have to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And so for her,
True.
it was just, like, I'm going to just touch my hat. She likes to wear a baseball hat. I think it just kind of covers her up a little bit. And she's like, I'm just going to touch my baseball hat. And so it works. She runs into these people who might trigger her. She touches her baseball hat. And then she comes back and tells me not only is that cue working for her, but it's also feeding some sort of a sensory stimulation thing that she's been trying to like control her whole life. So now she's got two skills that work together to cue her for her social anxiety and anger, but then also give her a little bit of an emotional release that she's been trying to hold in her whole life. It's just, I don't know. It just conversation, digging, letting them tell you who they are, what they want to work on. And just, I think another aspect of coaching is just being open to what they bring.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
hope that answers your question because I feel like I went off on a tangent.
No, no, no. It's so great. I think that, in so many ways, this is where we see some of the differences in psychology, like for psychologists and coaches, right? I see coaches to be so very, very focused on the present and the future.
Yes.
Here, right. And so we're going to create a space of understanding, which I think is therapeutic. And I'm just going to use that word because I think every human being thrives when they're understood by others, and they feel understood by others. But the process of understanding and how that gets articulated, sometimes I find can be really helpful. That formal process, which then gives people symbols or language for how to understand themselves and how to move forward. In psychology, we tend to be, not that we're not future focused. I will say, as a psychologist, I'm very present and future focused as well. But, whether I'm being asked to diagnose formally, which is something that separates a psychologist from a coach as well. But we're really uncovering maybe complex trauma that has
Yeah.
happened and really looking at the past and how that might have shaped who they are today and finding healing from that so that we can move forward. And I think that's just like another layer that is not necessarily in a coach's wheelhouse per se, right? As we're exploring trauma and healing and promoting healing and these things, which can come from not having a diagnosis when we're
Yes.
younger. And, we're still trying to get a sense of what autism in adults look like today, or ADHD in adults look like today, or autism in women. What does that look like? These are different, and it's not just the stereotypical Rain Man,
No,
look, right?
no.
And so I just love that there's this place where, life coaches, I really see life like coaches are really, really focused on, let's uncover these barriers for you. You're articulating where you want to go. So like, let's clear the roadblocks for you here and move you in that direction. And of course, that's dynamic and interactive. And while that end goal can change, right,
Yes.
through the process, what's great is that that person is seen and understood and seen as a competent person, as an agent in their life.
Yeah.
And I just love that process.
Yeah, I love it too. And it's so great. I love how you're kind of bringing it all together because, yeah, many of my clients have been in therapy, and that's how they feel, is that it's a lot of looking in the past and
Mhm.
working through that. And that's fantastic and so important, because that's what I tell them. I'm like, yes, that's something I don't really know how to help you come to terms with, but I'm ready to help you move forward. And so yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The two work together so nicely. And I do ask my clients who are getting therapy, like, what are they hearing from them, so that I can make sure that the the guidance that I'm providing works together. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and I was teaching, I was teaching special ed 20 years ago, and so much, of course, has changed about how we work with all kinds of students, but clearly my interest is ADHD and autism. And there was just this time, and I haven't been in a public classroom for 10 years. So just know that. So I don't really know what's going on now, but it was like, teach people who are autistic to cover up and
Yes.
hide. And so now I'm seeing the adults who have been doing that, and it's like, okay, but now we're not doing that anymore. Like, let's take a breath. Let's find out, like, how you can have your needs met and own who you are, explain who you are to the people
Yeah.
around you. Um, and so I just think it's so exciting. I mean, I'm so happy to be a part of this. It's beautiful. I love working with my clients. So great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so awesome that you're in this space. What's super cool, here's another difference between psychologists and coaches, is that coaches can work with anyone anywhere,
Yeah.
and a psychologist are limited to the state that they're in because of licensing and licensing requirements. And so in many ways, I'm like, wait, what decisions have I made in my life? you know, but Genie's a coach. So, Genie can work with you, even though, Genie's in Colorado. Genie can work with you if you're in California or Texas or
Yes.
Utah or wherever you are. If you're listening to this, Genie can provide that support.
Yep.
There needs to be more support in the neurodiverse spaces. I love how you were talking about kind of this idea of, what is normal, or, so many of our clients, especially women, mask. And
Yes.
I'm masking who I truly am takes an incredible amount of bandwidth. And, you know, um, resourcing and energy, that's limited. We can't, if we're
Yeah.
spending it all on masking, we're not spending it on work or learning or being, for that matter. And so to be able to understand that and come to this space really does equal some freedom here. I think we have a long way to go societally in regards to
Yes.
neurological diversity. And we're getting there with other areas of diversity, whether that's sex or gender or race, ethnicity, but we're not anywhere close with neurological differences or disability as differences and diversity in our world. So this is lovely, and it's usually these high achieving professionals who are late autism or ADHD diagnoses, and they've been masking all this time, and they're burning out in work and in
Yes.
school and in college. So I'm so glad that this exists for them, and so it's super super cool, Genie. Hey, Genie. Oh my gosh, this is a totally different conversation. And I'm only thinking about this because you were a high school teacher in special ed for so long. But, just the idea of what inclusion truly means is really interesting to me. And I'm not saying that, some classrooms that are more segregated are not beneficial, because it's a range of service and support. Um, I just wonder what it means, when we're not, when we just kind of move special ed students to their own classrooms and we haven't tried to integrate them into gen ed. It's bad for gen ed and it's bad for special ed. Because
Yes.
now we've flipped this kind of thing in Maslow's hierarchy, which is instead of having a sense of belonging first, and then you achieve your self-esteem, self-mastery to self-actualization, it's flipped, right? Now you have to demonstrate certain skills and certain things in order to belong in a group. And I just find this to be fascinating. Again, like this is totally separate, but I don't know. For someone that's been in special ed for 20 some years, as a high school teacher, I've been on more and more campuses lately. And I don't know. It's just a thought wrinkling around in my mind that,
Yeah.
inclusion's, yeah.
Well, I think I was there when it was the pendulum. I've seen the pendulum swing where it
Yes.
was, full inclusion
Yeah.
for all students, and
Yeah.
maybe that wasn't best. The extremes are not best, right? So
No.
then we kind of backed off a little bit, and now maybe a little too far in the other direction. And this is where it's so, special education is so exhausting because you love these students so much and you think of them as individuals and you want very specific program to be designed for each student. And then the pull of the paperwork and the meetings
I
and the
know.
whatever just gets in the way of being able to do that. And then we fall into whatever is easiest.
Yeah.
And then also the squeaky wheel. So the parent who is, the one that is always there advocating for their kid, and then
Yeah.
the parents who aren't there. It's just so complicated. And
Yeah.
I have a lot of opinions about public education
Yeah. Yeah.
in general. And we can talk
That's
about
a
that
whole
all day if you
sorry,
want.
I diverted us. I think it comes back to thoughtfulness, understanding, and intention.
Yes.
And in this one-on-one situation, which is such a luxury,
Yes.
the ability to dig around and sleuth and explore and research and understand and be curious, and then to try things and then dump them because they didn't work without any judgment, and to try something else. I mean, like this, to be able to do this with someone who can hold the positive space, and a productive and positive caring space, I think it's so powerful. So Jeannie, thank you for being in this space. I love it. I love it. And thanks for
I,
coming on and,
I love it.
talking about coaching. Hey Jeannie, if someone's listening to this and they're like, I kind of need to reach out to Jeannie. I would love to reach out to Jeannie. Sorry, I had to do that. Jeannie, how do people get a hold of you? Like, what's the best way for them to find out about you and to get a hold of you?
So there's a few ways. I would absolutely love to talk to anyone. I offer a free 45-minute coaching session for anyone who just wants to dive in to what's going on in their lives right now and then learn a little bit more about my services and how it works for them. And so you can find me on my website at genielove.coach, GENIE.LOVE. No, Genie Love, yeah, .coach. Okay, anyway, my name is GENIE. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
You can also find me on LinkedIn. That's where I hang out on social media. I don't really love social media very much, so that's the best place to find me. So you can find me there, and I post podcasts that I'm on. I've got like a free guide that you can use to calm and quiet your ADHD and autism brain. From there, you can also sign up for a weekly newsletter, just packed full of stuff about my program and just anecdotal stories going on in my life. I try to keep it short and easy to read. So, all of that, you can find me. If you want to just email me, you can email me, genielove.coach. But you can book a call from my website and we can, I'd love to talk to you.
That's
I'd love
awesome.
to.
I will put that information in the description below and in the show notes. And again, Genie Love, no period in between. Genie Love, one
Thank,
word, dot coach.
yes, thank
And
you.
Genie, yes, I was like, but I will put it in the description in the show notes. Genie, thank you, thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate you and I appreciate your energy.
Thank you. It's so fun to talk to you. Thanks so much for having me here.